Okay, good morning. Practice good morning. Next time I have to add the local version of how to say good morning. How would I have to say it in Hindi?
Namaste.
Namaste, namaste. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to pick it up on where Lija left it, about 2020. The last 2 days we attended an international conference here in Delhi on the World Trade Organization. As you probably have read in the newspapers, after 9 days of negotiations day and night, we followed this very closely in Geneva. They had to disband, and now the question is what comes next? For India, it's very important to have access to foreign markets, and there was here yesterday and the day before that your Minister of Commerce, Mr. Kamal Nath, and the Director of the World Trade Organization, Mr. Bhaskar Lamy, as well as other prominent actors in this negotiation, were here present, sharing the same panel, and trying to figure out whether the whole issue is now, has the negotiations stalled, failed, was it a bump on the road, a pause, an interval, and they all agreed at the end, well, there is a lot of momentum, and we will go beyond the current impasse. And there was also mentioning about doing more than saying no. So we'll move forward to saying yes, and we don't know yet what they will say yes to, but of course, I think for you it's all apparent for Indian companies, with the momentum going in terms of growth, and at the same time slowing of the world economy, to have continued access to foreign markets will be important to ensure continuity of the pickup of the Indian economy. And of course this is also means to produce goods and services and to sell them as well abroad as well as locally. And the selling and producing means human beings, it's people, human resources. We'll come back to that in more detail. And we would like to emphasize, in order to do successfully meet the competition today and tomorrow, there's an agreement in the field to move to HRD 2, meaning to go beyond what used to be called HRD. That was more administration, paying salaries, making sure that everything is within legal boundaries, but a more passive function versus HRD, here standing for proactive, strategic, participating with top management to ensure the company's success here locally as well as internationally. And we'll explain this in more detail, and also to what extent ISO 10015 can make that contribution of helping your company continuously also be sure that you have the right performing mix of human resources, of staff, of people who are working in your companies. And we will also share the experiences. Hari will talk about Sona later today, but we'll have other examples to present to you. And I would imagine that several of you maybe have read some of the articles that are already out and public. So we want to be sure that what we contribute to you and in our discussion of 1 day, it's only a 1-day workshop, if there are things that already you're familiar with, please let us know. No need to waste time in repeating things that you might know already. So we want to look at how could HR contribute to making your companies high-performance companies or enterprises, and to stay in touch with the environment internally, externally, and to ensure that it's not, we're not talking about education, we're talking about training And training in a company also would mean not a punctual, one-time course, but learning as a continuous process. And helping our companies adapt to changing environments, that is of course done through the people who work in the companies. They have to adapt. They're the ones who see new opportunities. They're the ones who help and produce and innovate. So we have to also ensure that we provide them the right knowledge and the right skills so they can do this successfully. Now, as a starter, we really want to be a bit occasionally stepping out of the, let's say, the normal function of HRD and look at the totality of an organization. I have here, we have listed several of the factors which have an influence on company performance.
This chart that you were putting up this morning, so it's not, this is the only chart, it's not in your handout.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
Sorry for that. If you look at from the top to the bottom, there are different factors which have influence, positive or negative, on a company's performance. The equipment, machines, the tools the company has or not doesn't have. The salary that are being paid. The supervisory function by top management and management in general. The job characteristics, or let's say job descriptions. The performance appraisal for the companies that have performance appraisal and how it is being conducted. The work environment, the climate within which people work. The training that is being offered to the staff. The kind of leadership that companies provide, the leadership, the norms and culture, the organizational culture, and setting performance targets. In the past it used to be called setting basically objectives. Now here, this is nothing new, but I'd like to put this into the context of the locus of control. Who actually can ensure that all of these 10 factors are done and organized in a way that actually contributes to a company's success? Is it in the hands of the individual? Is it in the hands of management or of the total company, of the complete organization? I'm sorry that this was not added, so can I ask you just to take 2 minutes and copy this chart as it is on a piece of paper. Done? I'd like to ask you to draw it because we'll afterwards discuss it with other colleagues. So just to chart it down at this stage. Once you've jotted it down, now on your own, just mark in the appropriate box where do you think is the locus of control for these 10 factors. Who can decide on, for instance, the right appropriate salary level, the job design, and so on? Take it down from the top to the bottom. Sometimes it might be both. Then you just put an X between the two columns.
What is the difference between management and
Organization is the total company, and the total company sometimes might have a policy which is binding for all of management, versus what, let's say, a unit manager in charge of a business unit might have some leverage and freedom to have his own approach. Done already. You went from the top to the bottom and put each one of these 10 factors in any one of the 3 columns. So basically we were just saying, you know, once you've charted it down, to then say, or make it up your own decision, who is in charge, where's the locus of control on deciding, for instance, about leadership. Is it the individual? Thank you. Is it the individual, the management, or the organization? And just put an X in any one of the boxes that you think is the appropriate box to where the locus of control is.
Can you mark all 3?
Sorry?
Can you mark all 3? Yeah, if you
All 3, yeah, if you think so, yes. Okay, it looks like most of you have already done the first step. Now I'd like you to turn to your neighbors and form a group of 3. Share what you have on your page, look at what the other 2 have, and then discuss it and come to an agreement as a group of 3. What is, according to the views of the 3, where should the locus of control be of these 10 factors? Hello? I hear there maybe is a little confusion in terms of what's the difference between management and organization. I think that was already the question you put to me. Just to reiterate, management could mean the head of a department or the head of a business unit. And depending on how your company is organized, if it's very decentralized, it gives that manager a lot of leverage. It can even to some extent vary salary levels or can set his own objectives or her own objectives. Organization means policies which are binding for the whole organization, for all of the management. Okay? That's the difference. It's really across the board for the company.
The Chinese English to express this, basically, organization has not to do with the systems, okay? The institution. That's rules. Management is the managers, management is the manager, the whole group called the managers. And what does the, managers have certain authority, discretion. So where here we are actually asking you, which factor can be determined by individual alone, a person who's an employee, or where he has to go for approval by his boss, or you have to really revamp how your organization is organized and structured and managed.
Yeah, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
The way I have rationalized in my own mind.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Okay.
Multi-skilled.
I'm very scared of multi-skilling. The organization is more referred to the policies and systems in the organization, which are common across the organization.
Right.
Management is more the implementation and practice of those systems and policies. While the policies may be very good, the management may not practice them in the true sense of it.
Right.
That's the way I distinguish between organization is the policy and systems, how well they are defined, and management is practices and implementation of those policies and systems. And individuals I'll take is more the attitudinal aspects of those individuals. Like, for just give an example, supervision. Supervision cannot be driven by policies, cannot be driven by practices, is more of an individual. In the same unit, you will have some isolated pockets of excellence, and the people who provide excellent supervision can impact performance to a very great extent. So in the same unit, you will have some pockets where the performance is high, another pockets where the performance is low, which I would call more individual driven rather than management and organization driven. Right. That's the way I see this.
In principle, I agree, but at the same time, I want to leave the space for others to disagree and to agree. Fine.
This is what I
look at. No, thank you very much. Okay, maybe 5 more minutes in the group of 3. Make sure that you come up with a group agreement as to the locus of control of these 10 factors. That you're in, and I'd like you to do one more step. First, decide at the table who are the 3 who remain at the table and which are the 3 or the group of 3 that will go and travel. Would like you to now also share what you have with another group of 3. So in other words, 3 remain at the table, one group of 3, and the other group of 3, or maybe it's a group of 4, depends on how many were part of your group, travel to the next table.
So they have to stand up.
You would have to, some of you would have to get up and physically move to the next table. Maybe Licha, go and help move. but we're running, have to be mindful of time. I would suggest now the following procedure. Let's take those 10 factors one by one. Stay seated where you are at the moment. Stay seated where you are. You can go back to your table afterwards. And let's go table by table, factor by factor. And I will call on the first table to give the results of your discussion. Let's take the first factor, tools, equipment, and machines. Where do you see is the locus of control as to decisions about tools and equipment?
We have not been able to arrive at there. It is very difficult to say if there are 6 people sitting and saying, being Indian, we will take the whole day.
Okay. But is there sort of a majority decision emerging?
Because we are still discussing this management organization, individual that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then we talk about is it a software company or is it a power utility company or is it a manufacturing company?
Okay. Sure.
Very, very different.
Okay. Any other table? Have you come up with a group decision as to machines, tools, and equipment? What is it at this table? What's your view? More management than organization. Other views, same for you, more management than the organization. That's agreed. 2, salary, we agree to disagree. I think it's clear. Management, when it comes to IT, for instance, if it's a lot of money, you have to have a procurement form, you have to fill it in, you have to present it, you have to get approval and so on, that's clear. But maybe the initiative comes from management and the organization has to approve it if it's a lot of money. Salary and compensation. Let's move on, next table.
Salary compensation say management and organization is the locus of control for taking the decision on compensation benefit and salary. Management and organization.
Management and organization. Any different views? Yeah?
Sometimes individuals can also influence because if the person has some kind of very rare talent and you know that this kind of talent is not easily available in the market and you require that person, he's leaving the organization, he forces you to increase his salary. So there could be a number of cases where individuals also influence salary.
If they're very they have talents that the company needs,
Yes,
then in their salary bargaining they have a lot of power.
Yes.
But at the final end, to decide on, say, salary increase, who decides?
The other thing I would like to draw your attention to is in case of, for example, the worker agreements, where there are individuals who actually influence salary. Negotiations, the wage agreements,
sure.
Wage agreements by the workers.
Okay. Other views? If everybody agrees? No? Yeah? In the back?
I agree with what she said, that yes, to a certain extent, a particular employee, if there is a demand-supply, gap in getting the right talent, an individual too plays an important role in negotiating his or her salary to a great extent. Especially when the market says that, so when there's a scarcity of the critical talent. So I agree with her to some extent, on this particular parameter.
But that salaries within the overall philosophy.
There have been organizations who have gone out of their way to get a certain talent to their organization.
Organization will go out of its way to get a niche talent.
Niche talent, yes.
Others who go double out of their way to get that talent. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, but then the individual does play a role here. It's not like the organization has a...
Okay, one more, then we move on in the back. We're talking about the final say, the decision.
Just a minute, please.
Yes.
I would like to float in here while we're discussing individuals bringing in niche talent and salaries being affected. What do you say to brand name then? Why don't you enhance the brand name of your company? The salaries and compensations will take place, fall in automatically. When your brand is figuring out and people are thriving in to join in your brand, then the salaries and compensations play no role. People are wanting to join your brand. Why don't you create healthy practices? It does. And if an individual is taking the company for a ride, it's high time the organization did some thinking.
Okay. Right. All right. We'll come back to this, especially the section where I will share with you the results of our survey which we've done for CII on labor turnover. But here it's basically just a question at the final end. Who decides what money goes into the pockets of staff? I think it is still the management, no? And the company normally gives policies as to how much can be paid. Supervision. Yeah, okay, please.
In software industry, a few years back, if you remember, again, there was a mass exodus of a sort to US, because we had the talent and they were leaving. In that situation, suddenly you saw IT companies, forcing, they were literally forced to double their prices, their salaries. So in that case, would you say that the locus of control was still with the organizations or with the individuals?
It's just the locus of control in terms of who is paying the money. What money, how much it's being paid, that's a bargaining power, which of course they're the individual. If it's a talent in the IT sector who is a rare pool of talents, then they have a lot of power to negotiate a higher salary. But the final salary has to be paid by the company that the person joins.
There was a report about an organization a short while ago in Bangalore which had to shut down because it was basically, it became unviable over a period of time because it had to pay a lot of more money than it could afford to. So where is the locus of control? It is. I would like to debate. There's no time to debate now, but I think I would still disagree.
Yeah. Okay. Supervision. Table in the back. Anybody disagree? Agrees? Disagrees? I think this one is an easy one where everybody agrees. Management. Job design, job characteristics, job description. Management and organization. In which way also organization?
The organization determines that what the type of industry it is and what's the type of the jobs are going to be assigned, what's the type of hierarchy, and with that comes the job characteristics. That is not determined by the management, that's determined by the organization. The hierarchy, the structure, from that comes the characteristics.
I would see the organization in the sense that there should be a strategy. The company has to have an idea in what markets and how it wants to move into and act in the market. Hence, it needs the people, and based on the jobs, the products, the services it provides, you can deduct from that what type of jobs are needed. Talking here about the type of job. The question is in the companies that we represent, are jobs defined or are they ill-defined? In other words, are they just basically informal and the employee creates his or her own job, or is it defined? Where it's defined. Everybody more or less agrees on that. Okay? So it's both. We see the management organization. How about performance appraisal? Management is supposed to do the job appraisals, and the company either has a policy which says you have to do one by year or one every 2 years, and they're supposed to also check whether the managers do job appraisals. Do they do that regularly in your companies? We studied this, it's one of the most difficult HR functions. And many companies maybe make an effort to introduce a new job appraisal. There's enthusiasm, and 2 years later, kind of disappears. Okay, working environment, the climate. Is it, friendly place, including physical work environment, how much space people have to work, the kind of lights, the windows, whose decision is that? Maybe your table? Management? Management, I think, should have the initiative, and in order for an environment, a physical environment, to be pleasant, you have to get the budget to do that. So you have to also have the organization be involved in it. Training, that's the topic of today. People in the back and this table, what did you decide? Who decides on training?
Management decides on trainings, but actually how you are able to perform, that is training evaluation. After training, the evaluation you do, how much you are able to perform, that is actually the burden lies on individual. So we decided both, individual and management.
In the sense that an individual might take a training course and then decide not to use what he or she has learned. Yeah, that's... or it's the reverse. The boss says, not invented here, keep it to yourself. That could be then a management decision, right? Sorry? Yes, right. How much money should be spent on training? How many days of training is mandatory? What kind of training?
How best to use him also? The one who has been trained, how best to use him after training? At the organization level, that's an important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Leadership. We come back to you. Yeah? Leadership? Individual. Yeah.
From control perspective, like, the leadership style, probably at the management or organization level, not at the individual level. Individual, when I say people at large, they don't have control on the leadership. Leadership comes from management or the organization.
But where's the locus of control in terms of being a good leader or not an effective leader?
But style differs from organization to organization.
True, but so what would you say? Yeah, I think it is primarily individual. Either a leader is capable, motivated, and acts in a leadership role, but it is also organization in the sense that if an organization has incompetent leaders, to sanction incompetent leadership versus just let the management do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I have a point here. We are debating on this. When you mean by leadership, you mean the individual leaders or the leadership process?
Yeah.
So the leadership process is institutionalized by the organization.
Right. It's not in that sense being defined very clearly. We talked about individual leaders. Right. So if it were leadership as a system, as a process, a different story. Then it will be more organization. Norms and culture, the beliefs, the values, discipline also, management. In which way would it be also organization?
The overall philosophy, the culture.
Yeah. Mission statement, vision statement, and then also make sure that all of this is being implemented. Yeah. Last one, performance targets, setting performance targets. Individual and management. What about the organization?
From the vision perspective, from the goal perspective, like probably it comes from the organization. Actually, organization and
normally you have, for each year, there's a strategy. Performance targets are being set for the business units, and then management is there to implement it, and that gives them some leverage. But oftentimes it's set by a company where it wants to be next year. Right? Okay, so we have, I think, more or less agreed on, and had, of course, also disagreements. I think we can live with heterogeneity of deciding, but overall I think we had some agreements. Now you might have asked yourself, why the heck did we do this exercise? And the reason for that is because ISO 10015 is a comprehensive instrument that looks at the whole organization. It's not about, to exaggerate, organizing training courses. Right? We want to look at both at the micro and the macro level. Training for individuals, for the company which sends and finances training. And some of that, there is shifts as to who is responsible, accountable, where should be the initiative, and that's why we wanted to have this first discussion as to who does what and should do what about organization and organizational performance. Now, I'd like to make a few comments as to the general situation. So we go back to the handouts that you have. If you wish to stay, you're welcome to stay. If you about the World Trade Organization, and also several of the speakers mentioned, which you all also know, that the main economies are at the moment slowing. Hence, with slowing economic growth, competition increases. Now, who survives at the extreme case? If we reach stagnation or even negative growth, it will get tougher. The question is how then to survive also in slowing markets, where also in terms of international trade and domestic trade, operational costs are to be considered. Demands on the other side by the human resources for better salary, higher salaries, better working conditions has to be also factored in. How does the company ensure to get talents, keep talents? There's a relentless push for more and more productivity increases or gains. Now, productivity gains, they're not going to just simply drop from heaven. They're achieved through the people who work in your organizations. They produce the productivity gains. And we reach productivity gains by working smarter, faster, and for all that, when it comes to working smarter, we need to have new knowledge, new skills. That's the link back to training. And heightened competition to attract the talents, and I will talk about this shortly. So with increasing competition, top management, of course, is also pushing for more performance, for higher performance of the people that work for the company. And there's an increasing desire by the HR, human resources, to take this into account and to say, look, if our survival and being competitive is based on our people and their performance, we know about the people. This is our job, it's our function. Include us at the top level as a strategic partner, not just to administrate salaries or to be there to, deliver what has been decided, because you know better, you are closer to the people and to the labor market, so you could actually help top management take decisions which will ensure its survival in difficult markets. But what often happens is top management says, we know how to do this. I don't know whether that's true in India, but in Western Europe and North America, where both of us have worked extensively, when it comes to, let's say, boil down to what is the specific competence of HR, oftentimes you hear top managers say, well, this is, it's easy. Everybody knows how to deal with people, and anybody could do this. No specific secrets about that. And if you work and you are in the HR position, sometimes it's difficult to explain. There is a lot of specificity as to what you can do in terms of contributing to the company's performance by dealing effectively, smartly, and humane manner with the people who work in the company. And there's the time pressure. People say, okay, look, we don't have much time for discussions, all this stuff with training, with HR, that's the soft side. If one day when we are again very profitable, we have that luxury, then we can talk. But now please go back to work. Let's work harder, faster, longer. And at a certain end, of course, you reach a burnout and people can no longer ensure productivity gains. On the contrary, there will be productivity losses. Now, we have last year, together with our partners with Confederation of Indian Industries, we have, I just have to end, not the end show, I had to get out of it. Okay. Yeah, it's done, yeah. We'd like to share with you the results of the turnover survey, which you have in the handouts, because a lot of it is directly relevant for training and for HR. We asked, it was last October and November, we sent out the survey, 152 companies responded, and we had a total response rate of 53.9%, which is actually a very good response rate taken into account, one, it's about HR and about labor turnover. Many companies are very touchy about labor turnover. They prefer not to share the information with others, especially coming from organizations outside. They're not known to them. And in general also, when it comes to paper and pencil surveys, there's a reluctance to write anything and send it off. So we're very happy with the high rate that we got. Who responded? You see here the type of companies who participated. The largest, tallest bar chart indicates companies between 1,000 and 5,000 employees, as well as just below 500 to 1,000. We also had a few large-sized companies above 10,000. We also wanted to know, are these companies who participated in our survey, are these new companies or older ones, mature companies? And you see the clear greater majority were companies who've been around for some time. A good size of 11 to 13 years of being in the market, and that's the majority of the companies who participated in it. We also wanted to know who filled in the survey forms, and we had most of the participation came from human resources, from your colleagues. We also had some of top management who participated. There we would have liked to have more also top management participate in looking at the strategic issue of labor turnover. But it's already a good-sized top management which also participated. But the majority clearly is HR. How many years were the people who filled in the forms, how long have they been in service, in the service and the function they've been in? When they filled in the form, you see also here we have more senior people who know their business. Age group the same, people who've been already around and know we can assume from this they know their business. Age group around close to 46. The sectors. Strongest were manufacturing. We also had IT and engineering, and a large spread, as you see, from other sectors and other companies. But clearly, majority manufacturing and IT combined. Then here were the causes that were communicated to us. Reasons why they lost people, why people left their company. Salary. Now that has been mentioned in discussions of just previously. How to pay how much more, how big is the bonus, how much can you pay and they still leave. Almost sometimes in the discussions we got an impression it was almost a desperate situation where companies kept paying higher and higher salaries and people still left. Or people left because they wanted to make a promotion, they wanted to have a career jump and they couldn't find that in the company that they were working in. So they left to have a higher, to move on in their career. But we took note of something that's in the middle, that's the gray bar chart. Relationship with supervisor, right, this one. Which surprised many when we shared this information and discussed it. So how could that be? We have decent managers, everything is fine with us. But when talking in more detail to the people who left, there was this feeling that they were just not happy with the management and with the relation to the managers. Now this, I think it would be worthwhile to study in more depth. Because if you have, and we've done similar labor studies in East Asia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, it was an important factor why especially young people left companies. Because they didn't feel they were respected or given a good enough treatment by their respective managers, but couldn't say it. They felt it was somehow, it was inappropriate and they wanted to avoid conflicts. And the way to avoid conflict was simply to leave, to go to another company. So what we really should check into this about the relationship with the supervisor. Linked to that, I think, is lack of recognition. It could be very simple, saying occasionally, thank you very much for a good job done. Right? That sometimes, surprisingly, is still a very few use this simple management measure to say thank you to the people who work for them. So if recognition is not there, also there was a reason for leaving, and of course also job content. Here we highlight the turnover rates by categories. Highest turnover, knowledge workers. Very high. What the response we got, you see here, turnover 60% out of 84 mentioned the knowledge workers have moved much faster and more quickly. But managerial staff also a high number, from 6 to 15%. Now, management is also, to some extent, institutional memory. So if managers also start to hop and leave to a large extent, the company loses institutional memory, and that is difficult to replace. We have here the most frequent range of turnover. When it comes to blue-collar workers, it's low. It's below 5%. That's what the response rate indicated. And again, as you see here, the real concern was mostly knowledge workers and managerial staff. There was a concern about them leaving and having to replace them. Having to replace them brings us to our topic of today. And if you have to replace people, you have to again integrate them, train them, and that's partially then, of course, a training and HR issue. And here this is of particular, I think, this is where I would say I would very carefully look at the younger ones who join you and tend to leave more easily and faster than the people who have been with the company for more than 1 or 2 years. The leavers are mostly 39% and 34% between 1 and 4 years. That's when you lose them. And it's maybe a generational issue also. They come in with new expectations. They know the labor market maybe offers alternatives. So how to keep them, that's really a strategic issue. What have the companies in order to retain good talents? Mostly paying more. And being frustrated that even though they pay more, people still leave. So it's just increasing costs, and the goal is not reached of keeping and retaining the talents that you want to retain. And giving new career options, and it also includes companies who pay a full MBA program, who let people go and study, without that they actually have to do much performance on the job, and they still leave the company. So it's really an issue. And training and development, to give more training. Now that's of course our field, right? But look at this. Almost 50% of the companies said, we think if we give more training, we can keep more people. Probably that's maybe what you do too. On the other hand, what we heard was from the people who are the job hoppers, let's say the talented IT knowledge workers. They said straightforwardly, I mean, I was in Bangalore, we heard that several times. I don't want to waste my time going to training programs that are not relevant for my job. I have to keep up with my field. And training, yes, but it has to help me stay abreast in the field that I'm working in, and for instance IT or software. If that's the case, I'll go. I'll be happy to take a training program, but I don't want to waste time with training that is not relevant to me. I think that was a very important message when we heard about this, and maybe we'll discuss this later on, that training is needed, but it should be relevant for, ideally, for both the employee and the company. What are the predictions? Maybe now, due to the slowdown in the economy, that might be revised, but still there is a perception that we'll have more high labor turnover to deal with this year and next year, in some range between 15 to 20%. Even if it's just 20%, some said much higher figures, and I think it's different from sector to sector. But imagine if you have to replace, if it's like say 25%, every 1/4 of your workforce will be newly recruited. It's an enormous task to train them up and integrate them. So there's more work to come this year, of course, as well as next year. Now, I'd like to propose another discussion, and we go for coffee break, but this one to ask within your own group, where are you? Where is your company in regards to labor turnover? How high is it? Of course, there's there's confidentiality that goes with it, and you might feel uneasy to share this with your colleagues. Maybe out of sense of competitiveness, but I would think when you listen to employees and they talk to each other, they talk also about labor turnover, they have some ideas. I think there's much more publicly known than we care about or would like that to be known. So I think we can share among colleagues where your company is in regards to your current labor turnover. Then also share with each other, what is your company doing about it? What's the strategy? Is it non-training, paying more salary, giving them an MBA, whatever? Or is it training? And if so, what kind of training is in your company expected to solve the labor turnover issue? And how does your own training strategy deal with the skills and competence requirements of the people who newly get to be recruited by you in order to, replace the people who have left you? Now, I would say, again, let's go back to the group of three. You already are familiar with each other, so the trust level should be very high. So you can discuss this now with the group of three. Maybe you join another group of three and go down the list of these three questions. How high is the labor turnover in your company? What does your company do about it? And to what extent and how is training a solution that you use to retain your talents? Form a group of three again, please. Yeah. Okay, sure. But it's interesting sometimes to hear from others too. Yeah. Form groups of three. Maybe use the rest of the space to move up front. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 more minutes.
No.
I'm curious, I'd like to see by a show of hands, in your companies, is training being used or considered to be useful to retain people, to retain talents? Please show by a show of hands. Only at the low levels. And majority says no. Now, why is that? Is it because it's considered to be not a training related job? It's just basically paying more salary or do other things. Training is not the solution. Yeah.
What I feel is training is not normally resorted to as the tool for whatever turnover arises or whatever. It's basically because we land up doing crisis management. Training is considered as a long-term solution. We'll end up solving the problems by increasing the salaries and compensations. It immediately arrests somebody stepping out of the organization. He takes his feet back immediately. And training development is normally considered at a higher level.
Yeah, sure.
As a long-term solution. That's one thing that comes to my mind straight away.
Training probably, it helps when, you have identified some role also for, wherein he can use those skills. Especially, in IT, wherein a person, let's say, working on one skill, and, he would like to work on some other project wherein some other skill is used. So, in case he's getting those skills, in case he's getting trained on, other skills, probably then it works. But training just for the sake of training probably doesn't work.
Okay. Please?
Training is one of the tools.
The lady first. Sorry.
Also because,
Could we have the microphone? Thanks.
also because people go for training with the attitude that they'll add something to their skills and then they'll add something to their CV and then they'll go out searching new jobs. This is one major factor.
Yeah. So why should I, if I'm the head of the company, pay for you to leave me afterwards and get a better job? Right. Yes, we heard that several times expressed. Yeah. Right. But then the question is, you see, with increasing competitivity, with faster turnover in terms of products, innovation, markets, can you afford not to train? Yeah, you're in a dilemma in a way. Yeah. And if you do training, more people might leave because their value has increased. Okay, please.
Training is not only one solution, it is one of the tools only for user development, as well as to give job satisfaction at the work also.
Yeah.
And training is useful only when need-based training is there. Need-based.
Yeah.
It is not going like people will thinking that, we'll add in, as Palak said, CV and all. When this will be need-based trainings, so he'll also feel comfortable and he'll also use this training for, company's vision and all. So this is only one tool. Definitely this tool we cannot ignore at all, whether the people are living or not, because the person till he is in the factory or he is in the plant, he'll be helping us, in getting targets also. So it is one of the tool only.
Clear. Okay. Thank you.
I think there is a dilemma. The dilemma is whether to link training as a dilemma for the coach, the organizational coach or the CEO, whether to link training with the short-term goals or to link training with the overall goals of the organization. Now you really do not know how people will balance it. Yes, as you say, it could go on a CV, but there are so many things also happening. People take their own initiative. They go to the part-time courses. They meet their friends. They go on the television. They go on the computer. They surf the net. So the thing is that the way the humans have grown, our evolution has left something to be desired. Because we always tend to take these things training. Okay, is it part of the recognition? Is it part of the gratification? Okay, I'm giving you a training, So it's both sides. There is a problem.
Sure.
So if we look at from that point of view, then perhaps we will be able to look training as something that is desirable. That is a must.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Good. We have to move on.
Bring it out here. We need to distinguish the training and development part of it. The training is what is required for that person to do his or her job more efficiently, which the company has to provide. Because without that training, the person will not be able to perform. And with the changing technology, training is constant kind of thing. Over and above that is the development of that person as an individual. How many companies invest in individual development? Because tomorrow they will be needing more managers, more matured managers. So that becomes a slightly longer term strategy. So there has to be a distinction between the training and most companies in the name of training provide the training because they know without this training their company cannot be functional.
Okay, thanks. This leads me to the last slide and then we go for a coffee and tea break. They also said more training is needed, and that's a job, I interpret it that way, that's a job of the government. If you look at this, 71.9% said this is an issue that should be solved at the national level. Now, I'm not sure whether this is really the task of the government to take care of development and of training. It's partially education which is supposed to do that. But it remains, in that sense, a question mark as to should a company or not invest in its people through training and development, short-term and long-term. Is it equitable? I mean, does it pay off for both the employee as well as for the company? And we'll be discussing this further. We'll also hear in the presentation, I think, to come shortly by Mr. Nair, what is the situation in Sona. So let's have a short break and be back. I think it's just outside. So with your permission, if it's okay, go to the toilets, get you coffee, get you tea, but maybe bring it back in here, and so we can start in 10 minutes' time, because Mr. Nair has to also go back to his job, and we're going
to come back in.
I need the floor.
Yeah, you before. No, because I will say a few words and introduce Harry. Well, we just trying to review that pocket. Well, thank you for taking the seat. And if you don't have a seat, please come up and join us. It's a bit, it's very blowing up here and very fresh. I just wanted to just sort of reposition and also make connections to what we said before. And I think indeed, today I think the task although we are confronted with the fact that people are increasingly sort of has a short-term and opportunistic behavior in terms of their affiliation and engagement with the organization. Nevertheless, if we are positioning our companies not in the commodity market or the segment, but instead we wanted to really rely on our knowledge, also unique proposition to compete, then we need to start thinking very seriously, how can we retain people and how do we capture the knowledge that has been created and how to make sure that innovation, creative ideas and best practices that can be very quickly disseminated within. So I think here the challenge, as I was talking to the Chief Learning Officer of the UBS about 2 years ago. That was before the whole disaster happened. And he was telling me that his CEO was asking him to give him a quarterly P&L report on learning. So his challenge was how do you transfer and convert and put a monetary or monetize the learning into concrete figures and numbers. And I think that really sort of highlights in terms of today's CEO's expectation, because what the CEO said, and I think it's very true here as well. He said, capital, technology, all are available. You can buy. The most difficult thing is that your own internal knowledge and the individual's sort of acquisition and utilization of this knowledge. So I would like to say that today, we are moving away. The first generation, when we talk about training management, is really about efficiency. How can we cover the largest number within the limited resources? And of course, when we talk about resources, we do not talk about the full budget. We most of the time, we really talk about operational budget and the money spent for trainers and for the programs. We do not really look at all the other indirect costs. So most of the HR department has a difficulty to really come forward and say what is really our real cost. I think this is the first thing we need to start thinking about. The second thing, I think, in terms of tackling the waste, in quote, the potential wasted training investment, it is not really about not to do training, but how to do training and manage the training and the learning process and the transfer process really smartly. You cannot expect to constantly recruit people and they have a prolonged sort of period in terms of the time to performance. In other words, they take a year to become ready to get onto their job and to produce, and to be productive, and also at the quality level that your, sort of more long stay and your planned performance target. So here we are also cannot escape the issue about managing training. So here the question is, I think, is really how can we can be more effective. And since we are talking about organizational learning, since we are talking about innovation, I think we need to have a process that can kick in and provide the signals necessary for continuous improvement. So this is really, I think we can say yes to all three, and this is really where the genesis of HRD version 2 come forward. In the menu, in the handout we provided, you could see that we start to talk about what are the results we're looking for, and I don't want to belabor the points here, and if I just by walking around, I think you're very familiar with. In case you have questions, or challenge our assumptions, and please come to us afterwards. So the question is really, how can we be strategic partners if this is what HRD and training version 2 is meant to be? Then I think the first really difficult questions for all of us is really how can we make our practice, our outcome more measurable? And how can we capture all the intangibles that the investment into the future that we can still somehow make it presentable in such a way that business managers could identify with. After all, they have been under similar requirements for more quantifiable results to be measured constantly, and we have had the pleasure and the privilege to not be requested to do such. But today, whenever we talk and wherever we go, ROI has been one of the key questions. So the key questions here is how do we, move the cost from stay on the the cost side, move over to the investment side, and how can we sustain the system-wide ROI? And I think, this is really sort of a moving, the focus from outputs to outcome to impact and also to sort of the potential future-oriented stuff. I'd just like to say, we all have our so-called STAR programs, which is very popular, has fantastic motivational reason. But even these programs, over time, it does suffer some sort of a variation. And also, performance, if we look at just level 1 from a sort of participant satisfaction point of view, there's also very different results. And also in terms of whether the participants can actually do the job. So there's variation between programs. So what the system that we're talking about today is really about how can we build something that can ensure some form of a consistency in the bottom line, and at the same time can help us to collect and to retrieve, manage the information so that we can continue to improve and adapt easily our training programs. And such kind of a management tool, frankly, we have to engage the line management much more than today, because the front end of the training process starts from the management. And when we talk about on-the-job transfer, application, and support, we have to go back to the management. And when we want to start to evaluate in terms of our own work performance, it is also going back to the manager. So how can we sort of create such a SOP, standard operational process, and using a systematic approach, going beyond our limited function area. We are actually looking at training system from the top to the bottom. So here we go, and that's what we want to talk about, is the next generation, the approach. And before we introduce our staff speaker, Mr. Harry Nair, I give a word to Raymond.
Thanks, Lee John.